Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Dion, and welcome to Off the Beaten Path. Hope you all had a great 4th of July weekend. Mine was good, but I always feel like the holidays up the ante in the city a little bit. Things get a little crazy. I think you can't go without at least mentioning the fact that over a 4-day holiday weekend, over 100 people were shot in the city. At least 16 of them were fatal. That's not good. And I'll leave it at that. So beyond that, we had a lot of stuff going on. I did a critical mass last Friday, so to kick off the holiday weekend. If you're not familiar with critical mass, it's these great big group bike rides that basically start at Daily Plaza and go through the city last Friday of every month. Great, tons of fun. But this one was a little crazier than normal. And so in the midst of it, there was just a lot of altercations between bikers and drivers, which don't normally happen. And then once we got to Greektown, a driver who was being inconvenienced by this pack of like a couple hundred riders coming through, which is not a big thing. Usually it takes the whole group 2 to 3 minutes to get through. 2 to 3 minutes. Just calm down. We go through, we're gone, you go on with your day. So he thought it was a great idea to go into his trunk and get a gun. He thought it was a good idea to go in his trunk and get a gun. Think about that. And so the great thing though is that right behind him was a police car. And the police came out, grabbed the gun, grabbed him, arrested him, and took him away. I hope they threw him under the jail, and I hope he's cooling off real nicely. So, beyond that, a few verbal pauses. So beyond that, I'm sure you all heard, an FBI agent, actually like 1 block away from where I am right now, thought it was a great idea to get out of his car, leave it running unlocked, with the keys in it, with guns, tactical gear in the car to get gas, I suppose, or whatever he was doing at the gas station. And someone came and hopped in the car and drove off with it. Although the news referred to it as a carjacking, I think that's more like a car finding. Like if I find a car that's running and sitting, why don't I just go ahead and hop in and drive off, right? Not necessarily my own way of thinking, but this is a major metropolitan city. I'm willing to bet that he's not from here. And I hope it wasn't one of Trump's feds, because that would just be a bad look. So I totally lost my train of thought. So let's just go on and move on to what I want to talk about this week. So I really wanted to talk about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I mentioned it last week, and I said this week I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about it. If you don't know what Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is, it's not hard to explain, but it's kind of hard to explain. I like to think of it as like what you see in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, the UFC, without the striking. It's just the wrestling part of it. You basically wrestle someone using leverage to control them, and then you use either chokes or joint manipulations to eventually make them tap out.
You're a dead man, Charlie Brown!
Some people refer to it as the gentle art.
Tap! Tap! Just do it! Just do it! Tap! Do it! Do it!
Some people refer to it as human chess. But it's beautiful. Some people say it's the most effective martial art in the world. I'd be willing to agree. Because ultimately, and that goes back to, if you remember the early days, this is my buddy Charlie. I was just roughing him up, but he's okay. If you look back to the early days of the UFC, you remember a little guy named Royce Gracie. And basically, Royce defeated, in a real fight, men who were much bigger than him. And he did it just by using control. And that's where Brazilian Jiu Jitsu was introduced at the world stage. particularly to the United States, to Americans who hadn't necessarily seen anything like that before. It was kind of something that was already big in Brazil, kind of going back to the what we consider or call the luta livre tradition, which was kind of bare knuckle fighting, wrestling, grappling. This month actually marks 8 years of me doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I love it, absolutely love it. And oftentimes people will ask me, why do you do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? And I really like the response that Ralph Gracie has been noted as giving when he was asked that question. And that's really what it breaks down to. Because someday, some dude's gonna try to take something that belongs to you, and you got to choke that motherfucker out. So, that's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, but it's amazing. If you've never seen it, you should go to YouTube, or you should be on YouTube right now, and you should take a look at it. Just Google it, find videos, see what it's about. I have training partners who are all shapes, sizes, ages, and both male and female. So I would definitely encourage you to check it out. It's amazing, it's beautiful. I've been doing it, and I'm gonna continue doing it. I'm a purple belt, and hopefully someday I'll reach the rank of black belt. Although, it really doesn't matter to me about the belt thing. I just like to roll around on the floor and choke people because that's fun.
You're a dude, man, Charlie Brown.
So I train at the Team Redzovic Academy. Team Redzovic actually has 3 main academies and several affiliates in the Chicagoland area. I train mainly at the Lincoln Square School, and I've been doing it forever. I remember I actually started doing jiu-jitsu when I was in Afghanistan, although I'd done limited jiu-jitsu just being in the military. You do your combatives, but combatives didn't become a big thing in the military until like towards the end of my career, which was like that 2000. I got out in 2009, but about in 2007, 2008, combatives was becoming a bigger thing because they were finding that a large percentage of soldiers were finding themselves in hand-to-hand combat situations while deployed. So I actually got into jiu-jitsu because there was a member on one of the teams I was on, and him and I would run into each other late at night when trying to watch the UFC events. If you're deployed, pay-per-view events are aired for free, but they're kind of, when they're aired live, prime time in the United States was like 3, 4 in the morning in Afghanistan. So we'd kind of run into each other in the TV room watching the fights. But it's like 3 in the morning, you just woke up, you don't really want to talk to people. So the first couple times we really, other than, hey, what's going on, didn't really talk. So one day, we're watching the fights, and I remember he kind of said to me, he goes, hey, do you train? And I was like, train what? He was like, jiu-jitsu, MMA? I was like, nope. And he was like, you wanna? And I was like, sure. And it turns out that the guy was a purple belt out of New York. And so, which at the time meant really nothing to me, but now in retrospect was like, he was really good, and I didn't even know how lucky I was to be introduced by someone with his talents then. But we actually had these mats, and we will pull them out, and the puzzle mats, if you've ever seen those, and we pull them out into the basketball court. So after we'd go out doing whatever, all our missions during the day or whatever, we'd come back, and before dinner, we would, he'd show me stuff, and we'd just kind of spar, and he'd show me, different moves, different things, here's what you can do in this situation, very basic stuff, and, and it was just kind of like, okay, cool, and we'd wrestle basically, and he'd tap me out. That's what happens in jiu-jitsu. We get caught in a choke or a manipulation, like a wrist lock, you tap. And so I'd tap a lot, and that was it. So when I came home from my deployment, I really was having a hard time fitting back in. So we actually talked on the phone, and he was like, how are things going? I said, not too well. And he said, well, have you been training? And I said, no. He goes, why not? And I'm like, well, I don't know where to go for that. And he's like, it's Chicago. It's gotta be a school there. He goes, just look around, asking people. So I actually ended up calling a guy that I went to high school with who had just started a career in MMA. And I asked him if he knew any places. And he said, you just want to do jiu-jitsu? I said, yeah. He goes, I know the perfect place. And so he was the one that told me about this school named Gracie Baja that was in Lincoln Square. And I remember going a few days later, a young lady named Emily that I was dating at the time went with me. And we walked in and there was this like pit bull face looking dude, like he was kind of all yoked up, he was sitting there at this desk. And I was like, hey, you do jiu-jitsu here? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. He's like, here's the schedule, gave it to me. He had an accent, like a kind of Eastern European accent. And I was like, okay. And he was like, we have a beginning class tomorrow, Wednesday, And I was like, all right. And he's like, just show up in workout clothes. I was like, okay. And that was it. That was pretty much the interaction. And I walked out and I was like, I don't know about this. Them cats might get crazy in there, And Emily was like, you should go. She goes, when you talk about just doing jiu-jitsu in Afghanistan, you really seem to like it. And so she talked me into it. And 8 years later, Emily is long gone, but the jiu-jitsu is still here, which is unfortunate. But the jiu-jitsu is still here, and I'm thankful to her for being supportive at that time and encouraging me to go. And the ride has been amazing. I haven't trained completely those 8 years. I actually spent 2 years in Alaska. And when I was there, I really wasn't training, but I actually started an after-school program, so I taught other kids. I taught kids jiu-jitsu. So the 8 years, I've always tried to stay connected and stay on the mats, which I've been able to do, and I'm progressively getting better. I'm obviously way better than I was when I first started, and I'm still progressing and still improving all these years later, which really is not a long time. I've trained with people who've trained 20 years. I've trained with people who've trained longer than that. So it's a journey. It's a long journey, but it's a wonderful. I've yet to find an activity that's mentally, emotionally, and physically demanding and pleasurable as jiu-jitsu. So that's my story, and gives you a little bit about why I do it. And I would definitely encourage you to look it up. I would love to show you some kind of video or something, but pretty much anything will get me with a copyright violation. So you just go ahead and look it up on your own. So. Oh, I almost forgot about the amazing 4th of July concert at Pritzker Pavilion by the Grant Park Orchestra this past week. It was on the 4th of July, and they actually did a replay of the exact same concert on the 5th of July at the South Shore Cultural Center. If you've never been to the South Shore Cultural Center, you should definitely check it out. Actually, if you're a bike rider, it's an amazing ride to just go from downtown to South Shore and back. It's a good workout, and once you get there, you'll find a beautiful facility and bathrooms and water fountains. But the concert was basically their annual 4th of July concert. It was directed by Chris Bell. He's the choir director at the Grant Park he's the Grant Park choir. I've tried to say this like 5 times. Chris Bell is the Grant Park. Oh, something in my eye. Oh, son of. Let's try this again. Chris Bell is the Grant Park choir director, and so he directs the 4th of July concert. He's a super funny gentleman. I've never met him personally, but he's very engaging. He dresses up. And it's a good time. And they do, your standards, your Yankee Doodle Dandy, and your Star Spangled Banner, and your, what's that other song I'm thinking about? The piccolo solo. Whatever, I don't know. But my brain is not working today. If you missed it, you missed out. But it was great, and there are tons more Grant Park Orchestra concerts coming, so be sure to check those out. Movies in the Park restart next week with La La Land, I believe, so check that out. And all the other things. I actually went to Summerdance this past week as well, and I learned how to Chicago style step, which was amazing, and it was good, and I kind of really enjoyed it. The Taste of Chicago is going on right now. I'll actually be there Saturday. I'm going to see the band Bailiff. They play at the Bud Light stage at 5:30, if I'm right. Check them out. There's tons of things going on. If you've never heard Bailiff, they're really good. The lead singer of the band actually trains Brazilian Jiu Jitsu too. So there it is. I'm sure there's tons of things that I forgot, and that's what happens. My brain's just not working today. It is what it is. So hopefully next week it's in a little bit better order. But I hope you all have a great week, have a great weekend. Do good things, enjoy the city, enjoy this weather, be safe, and be good, do good. That's it. Peace. Oh, and I almost forgot, my blog, Reflections of a Chicago Life on the Chicago Now platform, was actually shared by the Millennium Park Facebook page. Which seems like a small thing, but it was really cool because, hey, they're a big time organization, and they shared my blog, which talked about the activities going on in their city. They like me. They really like me. How amazing is that? So enjoy your week.